Imagine waking up tomorrow morning and discovering everything is gone. No job to clock into, no house to wake up in, no financial safety net to catch you. What exactly is your immediate plan for survival? The immediate reaction is usually to deflect. You might laugh nervously, tell yourself that would never happen, or just mentally change the subject. But that question tends to linger in the background. It surfaces during restless nights as a quiet, unnamed dread, a persistent wondering of whether, if every support system collapsed, you could actually stand on your own 2 feet. That restlessness isn't a random bout of insomnia. It is a highly specific, nearly universal fear of extreme financial vulnerability that women silently carry with them every day. Experiencing this paralyzing dread is not a personal failing. It is not a flaw in your character, and it is certainly not your mistake. Instead, it is the predictable outcome of a lifelong conditioning. From a very young age, the expectation placed on women is to manage relationships, to manage households, and manage the lives of others, while quietly ignoring their own autonomy entirely. That internal sense of weakness you feel is a symptom of deprivation. A fundamental right was deliberately left out of your education. The missing pieces are tangible: foundational financial awareness, the architecture to build personal safety nets, and outright unquestioned ownership of your own money. The fear thrives because the social system successfully engineered a state of forced dependency. By withholding the basic tools of financial self-preservation, the system guarantees you will feel unable to survive without it. Consider Reema. She is a 31-year-old teacher earning a modest salary, living in a comfortable, entirely normal marriage with no glaring problems. The catalyst for her wasn't a dramatic fight. It was a completely casual conversation where her husband asked if she could cover the budget for their upcoming family vacation. This diagram illustrates exactly what she saw when she logged into her bank account. Years of working, commuting, and teaching funneled down into a total balance of exactly 3,000 rupees. Looking at that number, she didn't cry. She wasn't angry at her husband. She just felt a sudden, hollow realization as her abstract anxiety instantly crystallized into cold reality. In that fraction of a second, she arrived at a definitive conclusion. She was entirely incapable of managing her own life independently. She kept this moment completely to herself. Traditional family structures simply do not possess the vocabulary to articulate or solve this specific flavor of financial dread, leaving women to process it in total isolation. It is tempting to distance yourself from Reema's story. You might assume you are immune because you aren't married, or your family provides a strong safety net, but this fear adapts. For a college student, it manifests as the quiet panic of what would happen if her parents' financial support suddenly vanished overnight. For the working professional, it takes the shape of calculating whether she could survive a sudden layoff and pay rent for the next 3 months without a backup. And for the dependent housewife, it is the constant quiet dread of what her life would become if the core relationship she relies on were to fail. Despite the entirely different circumstances, the core issue is identical across the board. It is the paralyzing dread of financial vulnerability and the looming trap of forced dependence. Regardless of your life stage, your title at work, or your relationship status, the underlying architecture of this financial anxiety remains exactly the same. The immediate reflex is to dismiss the anxiety, to tell yourself everything will work out. You need to stop doing that, and instead sit directly with the reality of the feeling. When this fear is left unexamined, it becomes dangerous. It operates silently in the background, subtly taking control and dictating your most critical life decisions. This flowchart maps how that hidden mechanism operates. The unaddressed fear routes pathways that push you to stay in misaligned jobs and maintain toxic relationships. The fear is a diagnostic tool, an active warning light signaling that essential work to secure independence remains undone. Acknowledging and dissecting that specific dread is the first necessary step toward actual self-preservation and dismantling your reliance on the system. Reema's response to her 3,000 rupee revelation was completely undramatic. She quietly opened a note on her phone and documented a private intention. She was going to understand her own money. She started with microscopic actions. First, she simply observed her salary flowing in and out without placing any pressure on herself. Then, she opened a separate bank account entirely under her name. Over the next 8 months, she hit progressive, tiny milestones. She saved 300 rupees, scaled up to 500, and eventually reached 1,000. Her anxiety did not miraculously vanish, but it permanently shrank in size because she had successfully manufactured tangible proof of her own agency. Financial independence does not require you to amass sudden wealth or execute a perfect financial strategy overnight. It simply requires generating the very first piece of evidence that you are capable of acting independently. Open a note on your phone right now. Privately document the exact nature of your unspoken fear to pull it out of your head and turn it into a manageable reality. Then share it with just one person to break its isolating power. The systemic fear of vulnerability is a heavy burden to carry, but taking one small, documented step ensures it is no longer the defining narrative of your life.